20 years. That's how long it takes for people to get a US green card. But what if I told you you can get it in as little as 12 months? What is that one thing that makes you actually want to get up and do EB-5 every day?
I think what matters to me is I've been into sales for a very long time in my life. What brought me to EB-5 was, of course, I was still making a sale, so that makes me happy. But I was really adding an intangible value to the lives of people, of families, and I keep telling my team the same thing, that we're not selling a credit card. Like we have the ability to do something for a family that could really change lives for them. So I think that is what drives me and wakes me up every morning.
Walk me through what a smart investor need to adopt while talking to a regional center.
They can think of hiring us as somebody who'd protect their family, and they need to ask the right questions. They should not be afraid to walk away. If something doesn't make sense, ask more questions. If it still doesn't make sense, just walk away.
We go to DC once a quarter. We meet with senators and House members to push immigration legislation, to push EB-5 reauthorization. And my partner was actually in a senator's office when the gold card was announced. And, the senator he was with was just as shocked, which goes to show that, no one was really aware that this announcement was being made.
So look at the cost of the experience and how they can fight for you rather than looking at just cost itself.
I think the most recent EB-5 myth is the 100% success. I'm just thinking of one more. Help me out.
We're seeing a lot of right now guaranteed green card in 12 months.
Oh yeah, the timelines.
They put an asterisk.
And there's always an asterisk, but
Yeah.
everyone misses the asterisk.
Yeah. I think the biggest myth is the WhatsApp group.
Oh,
Yes,
let's
like
get started there.
if somebody sends me a message saying, I try to educate them with the right information. I kind of sometimes send the USCIS website link to them, but then they come back to me, but I heard on the WhatsApp group, and yeah.
So what's the one question, according to you, that the investor should ask a regional center? Hello everyone, welcome back to EB-5 Decoded by Quantum Global. I'm Rashika. 20 years, that's how long it takes for people to get a US green card. But what if I told you you can get it in as little as 12 months? So today's episode is not another boring visa breakdown. It's a deep, honest, and no fluff conversation with two of the most respected voices in the EB-5 industry. And trust me, if you are even thinking about an EB-5 investment, this episode could save you the time, money, and sleepless nights. Let me introduce my guests and then get to the fun conversation. Rishabh Gandhi, Regional Director at Civitas Capital, is someone who truly understands the EB-5 investor from the inside out. His journey is incredible, giving him a rare combination of real estate acumen and global investor experience. He sat across the table from hundreds of investors, from the first-time immigrants to ultra H&I families. But what really makes Rishabh special is his insight into investor psychology. And how to guide people to clarity without overwhelming them is truly unmatched. He doesn't just sell a project, he helps people make one of the biggest decisions of their life with confidence. Thank you so much for your invaluable time, Rishabh.
Thank you for having me.
And then we have Niral Patel, partner KLDP LLP, a powerhouse immigration attorney known for cutting through legal jargon and making complex immigration law crystal clear. He's worked closely with hundreds of families navigating the EB-5 maze. But what I truly love about Niral is he doesn't sugarcoat things. If there is a risk, he'll call it out. If there is a smarter way of doing something, he will tell you right away. So whether you are an H-1B holder tired of winning the lottery, a parent looking to secure your child's future, or just someone exploring a fast, clean path to US residency, this episode is your roadmap to it. So before we deep dive into the complexities of EB-5, I want our listeners to understand the person who is behind the expertise of the fields. So starting with Rishabh. So what is that one thing that makes you actually want to get up and do EB-5 every day?
I think what matters to me is, I've been into sales for a very long time in my life. What brought me to EB-5 was, Of course, I was still making a sale, so that makes me happy. But I was really adding an intangible value to the lives of people, of families, and I keep telling my team the same thing, that it's not like we're not selling a credit card. Like we have the ability to do something for a family that could really change lives for them. So I think that is what drives me and wakes me up every morning.
So with respect to investor psychology, what I've seen is when we have done so many calls together, even with the seriousness of the conversation, you crack solid jokes and actually get their lives to our daily life situation. And this is something that I'm trying to learn from you. But how do you do that?
So, I've been on the other side of the screen as well, right? So I used to manage investments. I've been sitting, looking at a screen, trying to understand, when you're at the wire transfer screen, whether I'm making the right choice or not. And I do understand when the investors are doing the same thing, they're probably at the wire transfer stage and, trying to understand before clicking the button, whether, they're doing something right or not. So that's why if you look at my conversations with investors, I never start with, the brochure or flowery languages,
Yeah.
I basically cut through what the problem is. I kind of understand what questions normally would an investor have in their mind, and I would lead with that. And the other thing is I'm a teetotaler, so I never do meetings like in a 5-star. I invite people for a chai. It works in India, so I think that has helped me break more tension as compared to any other brochure.
Understood. So what's the one thing that you would do if you weren't doing EB-5 for your living?
I would still be part of some selling. Probably go back to real estate. I come from a family background of real estate, and that is what I've been doing for all my life. EB-5 was just a natural fit where a lot of capital goes into a real estate project, but at the same time I was able to add a value to investors. So I would say if not EB-5, then definitely stick around real estate.
Okay. Got it. So Niral, from the time that I've been working with you, I do understand that you cut through the noise and you go extra mile for your clients. So what made you choose EB-5 law?
I don't think anyone actually ever chooses EB-5. We try to hire paralegals, attorneys all the time. And the one thing you can never do is find someone with EB-5 experience, simply because EB-5, I think, is something that everyone falls into at some point in time. For me, I was working at an immigration clinic at my law school, and our end of year project was, write a report on an immigration program that you don't have any idea about. Honestly, I Googled something and I came across EB-5, wrote a report on EB-5, and then my first job out of law school was at an EB-5 law firm, and I took that report.
Okay.
And that's how I got into EB-5. So I think people just sort of fall into EB-5, and once you're in it, there's just so much to it. There's real estate development, there's investment, there's the legal side of things, whether it's on the securities or immigration side. There's so many different avenues that you can work around in EB-5 that it keeps it exciting.
Got it. So with the n number of paperwork that you get and fighting federal laws, what is it that you decompress yourself with?
A lot of TV. We find ourselves on flights all the time.
Yeah.
So it's a good time to catch up on TV. So, Netflix is often my best friend. We were discussing earlier, I think, yoga is something that can help the mental space, I think is always important. So yeah, those are really it.
Rishabh, do you do any kind of physical activities with respect to decomposing your mental health? Yeah.
I think I like to go for drives. So sometimes I don't think I've ever stuck to a 60-minute call. I don't look at EB-5 that way. So most of the time, if at times I'm just exhausted, I would just, go for a midnight drive, play some of my favorite music. And, it's good to drive around Dubai at night time. It's still lit up, and, it's really, really nice. So I think.
So driving cars is your guilty pleasure?
Owning cars as well, but yeah.
I think that was the first thing you told me about yourself when we first met was Rishabh's love for cars.
Yeah.
Thank you both for sharing this. So let's deep dive into what our listeners are here for. The real unfiltered thought process about EB-5. So Rishabh, you've worked with thousands of investors from your previous stints to now at Civitas. So what are the 3 things that you have noticed about investors who get wrong when evaluating a project?
Okay, so get wrong. I think fancy brochures, people just assume if a brochure is really, really nicely done, that does not speak of the quality of the project. I also feel people underestimate the construction timeline for the job creation. Like, every project will create jobs, but sometimes investors really need to look at, okay, what is the timeline for construction? When will the jobs be created? Will it be created in time for my, final step as my permanent green card? And of lately, I've looked at investors focusing a lot of time on return on capital and not return off capital. So I think those are the three mistakes that comes to my mind at this moment.
Okay. So walk me through what a smart investor will think like. What's the mindset that they need to adopt even while talking to a regional center?
I think the easiest thing that they can do is, they can think of hiring us as somebody who'd protect their family. And for that, they need to ask the right questions. They should not be afraid to walk away. Like, if something doesn't make sense, ask more questions. If it still doesn't make sense, just walk away. And most importantly, I think they should not look at it as a discount deal. Like, a lot of investors come to us, like, the first call that I have with them, like, we're not talking about, what are their objectives of EB-5? What are they expecting out of it? The first thing that they ask is, what is going to be the discount that you're going to offer me? And I don't think that's the right way to start a conversation, not specifically on the EB-5 side.
So do you think zero admin actually attracts investors?
I have a little bit of marketing experience as well, like doing EB-5. It's a good, I call it like a lead magnet, right? It's good to attract people. Unfortunately, it started with, like that, but there are projects who've made it. I wouldn't say that a project is bad because, it really depends at what level of fundraising are you in the project. So if you're fairly early, you want to get some momentum, you want to keep your sales team motivated, it's okay to offer, no admin. Basically, the idea is if there are 200 slots, you want to average it out, right? So maybe initially we'll not get any admin, but we've had investors who've done a higher admin, right? Higher than even our base of 20,000. So we've had investors come in at 60,000, 40,000 admin. So it depends on at what level of project are you getting in.
Understood. So Niral, the legal documents are very intimidating. By the time any investor comes to you, they've already spoken to maybe 5 RCs, 2 consultants, 3 immigration attorneys. Okay. What is the most common legal misunderstanding that they have or as an oversight before they come to you and ask you the same questions? Because there are a lot of screenshots that's being exchanged with respect to ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity.
Yeah. I think the biggest mistake or oversight on the investor's half is that they assume that everyone is the same. So I always ask an investor who I know that has been obviously shopping around, whether it's, especially on the immigration attorney side, is whether they're looking to buy a product or whether they're looking to invest in a service. Because if it's simply a product and you believe that every attorney offers the exact same product, you go for the cheapest one. There's no doubt about it. I would do the same. But I think you also need to remember as an investor that this is a long-term relationship. To get from now to getting your permanent green card can be 5, 6, 7 years, if not longer. So you need a team on the immigration side that's going to be with you every step of the way. And this is post-filing. This is someone who has the level of expertise in the current law, who understands where the law is going, who understands how USCIS works, who understands trends, knows how to make the proper inquiries and filings with the USCIS to push your file along. Not every attorney, I think, offers those sorts of services. I don't think not every regional center offers those sort of services to their investors. So investors need to decide, what they want to put their money or resources into.
So look at the cost of the experience and how they can fight for you rather than looking at just cost itself. Exactly.
Like Rishabh said, if the first question I get, sometimes I'll just get a random text, no name, nothing. What's your cost for EB-5? I just delete that message. There's no point going down that road. I want someone, at the end of the day, this is your money. This is your green card. So you need to be just as invested into this as I am.
True that. So let's talk about one of the most misunderstood parts about EB-5, the sustainment period. Given the ongoing lawsuit, what is it that really investors should be looking at when locking in the funds for 5 to 7 years? Let's go ahead with Niral. Yeah.
I would say, right now we don't know what the outcome of this lawsuit is going to be. Pre-March 2022, under the old iteration of this EB-5 program, the sustainment period was your 2-year conditional residency period, which meant that you had to complete your 2 years of the conditional green card, and only once you filed your 829 were you eligible for repayment. That doesn't mean that's when you get repaid, because you still have to see out the loan terms from the project. In October 2023, USCIS posted on their website that, look, we've interpreted the Reform and Integrity Act, and now we believe that the sustainment period is a minimum of 2 years investment. It's no longer tied to your immigration timeline, and as long as the jobs are created, that's when you're eligible for repayment.
Yeah.
Now, of course, USCIS got sued on this matter because USCIS, you can't just post something on your website and all of a sudden that becomes law. So the outcome, which we're all waiting for, I think will go one of three ways. It will either be, okay, 2 years minimum investment, job creation, you're eligible for repayment. That might go to 5 years. Or a judge may say, well, USCIS, you didn't follow the proper rulemaking, so you need to go back, follow the proper rulemaking procedures, and come out with this law or the rules if that's what you want it to be. And until then, we're going to revert back to the pre-RIA rules. So what I tell investors who say, I want my money back in 2 years or 3 years. Well, first of all, you don't get a choice, unfortunately. You know, this is all governed by immigration law and also by project development. But you should also just be expected to be locked in for at least 5 or 6 years. If you get your money back earlier, then great. You can celebrate. But if you pick the right team for you that you know is going to protect your capital for the long term, then at least you have peace of mind.
Got it. So with respect to this, Rishabh, do you get, I mean, I'm sure that everyday investors must be coming to you with respect to who have invested pre-RIA as to how is their capital being preserved. So what are the kind of conversations that you are having recently?
I think pre-RIA, there was this big concept of, redeployment. And, that is where the track record of the regional center played a very important role. Like, it's one thing to do a project, but it's, the other thing to complete a full cycle. So I think on the pre-RIA side, the redeployment played a crucial role. And there are rules around where you can redeploy. It depends. Of course, it has to be within the United States. What we as a regional center do is we used to send out like a consent form. So every investor actually had a choice whether they want to be redeployed in project A, project B. They had the option to withdraw and work with their immigration attorneys to find an alternate project. So we were always okay with that. I think post RIA, what I want to add on to what Niral said is, we have a lot of investors who come to us saying, why is your project locked in for 4 years? The USCIS only requires for 2 years. They need to understand that, the end goal of EB-5 is job creation, right? Like when we are looking at a project, we're not just looking at the tenure. We're looking at the track record of the borrower. We're looking at the pedigree of the sponsors and other stakeholders involved, right? So we cannot make that a priority. What we want to do is we want to bring on a project, which meets the USCIS guidelines, create the necessary jobs, and the scale of the project would not, necessarily match the 2-year timeline. So the reason we cannot do shorter projects, if we go for a decent sized project, the construction time plus the stabilization period for the asset, that would add up to at least 4 years. And then we always build in buffer because, there are macroeconomic factors that can affect, the real estate industry or the hospitality industry. So we always built in a buffer so that, there are no surprises in the end, right? So the investors is aware from the very start that, okay, the 4 years is the lock-in. That is when, we would forecast for the asset to be stabilized, but it can, go longer.
So are you saying that investors do have a choice with respect to the redeployment? They can choose which fund are they investing if redeployment happens?
With Civitas, yes. So our compliance is, has created like a plan wherein a consent form, like I said, is sent out, and we give them a choice. The last choice is, they can withdraw and work with their immigration attorney and find an alternate investment option if, they do not like anything that we want to offer. At our end, of course, we try to match the project with the same pedigree of developer, the same risk appetite. So we would not take money out and, reinvest it in something fancy. We would try to match the risk profile of the previous project.
Understood. So let's get a little bit controversial. Okay. So Rishabh, so many regional centers are offering loans. Okay. When they say there is a loan support or a bridge fund, what do they exactly mean by this?
So, we've been trying to do that ourselves. We were just waiting, trying to get our feet wet in the waters. I think if the regional center really understands how to structure it, the USCIS would accept it. It depends on a very, very strong pedigree of diligence that goes beyond, behind offering this loan. I think a lot of investors that come to me, they ask me, can I just, put in X amount, the rest, can it be a loan? And, can I redeem it at the end? What we feel is, they should use this as an enabler. Like, they can, if they don't have funds liquid, if they have planning, or, if they're forecasted to receive certain amount of capital in the next 2 or 3 years, they can use this as a loan, like a stopgap arrangement versus, relying on it completely. So we're not like in the business of providing a loan for EB-5. We just want to make things simpler because there are currency restrictions, that are there in India and China. So we want to be positioned that way. So we don't want to be seen as, supporting, like as equity partners to the EB-5, because the primary motive is the investor has to put in the $800,000.
Understood. So Niral, what should the investors actually be aware about or cautious about while doing a loan structured EB-5?
I think they've got to, at least from a source of funds perspective on an immigration side, we've structured some of these loan deals as well. And it's got to be a real loan. And what I mean by that is there's got to be a proper underwriting process. You've got to check the credit worthiness of the investor. The investor needs to understand that just because you want a loan doesn't mean you get one. It's just like requesting a loan from any bank. You've got to apply for one. You've got to show that you do have the necessary assets to back this up. And even though unsecured loans are allowed, you still have to show that you have the ability to repay this loan. So investors need to understand that, okay, just because an RC is offering a loan, they still have to go through the due diligence process like Rishabh was talking about to even qualify or be approved for a loan.
Got it. So what about the regional centers who are offering a loan of 400K? Okay. I'm an investor situation. I have the liquidity of 400K to put in. It's an unsecured loan. I put in the 400K today. The rest 400K is put in by the regional center. They tell me, don't pay the 400K, but just give me the interests. And that 400K which you have already initially paid for, that is going to get adjusted. So in this case, there are two things. As you said, one, there needs to be a payback plan or the liquidity in order to be looking at it. If they go ahead with this particular regional center who's offering this, how is USCIS going to be looking at this case?
So, I mean, I can't speak for sort of every loan that's out there or how every loan is structured, at least for the ones that when I'm doing due diligence on source of funds, an investor comes to me or through a regional center saying, I want to partake in their loan program. We do make sure that, again, they have the interest payments that they're making are first documented. They should come from a verifiable source. And there needs to be an ability to repay. And then once that repayment is started, because at some point you do have to repay this loan. There's really no such thing as a loan that you don't have to repay. And so you also have to make sure that that repayment comes from a verifiable source. If there's simply a loan out there that says, no, you don't need to put in the balance, that by definition, that's not really a loan.
Correct. Understood. So what percentage of RC structured loan projects actually make it through the USCIS?
I don't know about exactly what percentage.
Scrutiny, actually. No, with respect to scrutiny, let's say out of
I think we've seen a lot of people, at least in the industry, who have explored the idea of doing this. And, once we go through the process, they sort of realize that, okay, this isn't as easy. It's not as simple as a friend giving a loan.
Yeah.
This is, you've got to get the proper lending licenses from within the US in place. Again, you have to have the proper application process, the proper underwriting process to show, how each of the borrower is meeting the criteria that you set out. And, it should essentially mimic what a bank does. Even though you're a private lender, you should be doing exactly what a very strict bank would do in terms of taking on borrowers.
So is there a way for investors to verify whether a loan structure is immigrant compliant?
I would inquire with the RC and your immigration attorney. They should be able to tell you. I mean, if they've used this loan program before and they've used it with other investors and it's gotten approved, that gives you a pretty good idea that, okay, USCIS has accepted this. At the same time, USCIS's rules constantly change internally. And so you need a good RC and a good attorney who understands this and is, can deal with it.
Got it. So And from a financial perspective, how much additional risk does a promissory note or a bridge loan bring into the project?
I mean, I think that might be better for you because at least from our end, it just depends on, is this approvable from a source of funds perspective?
Because if it is designed in an unsecured loan, okay, and if it is collateralized, and there is a lot of collateral also in picture, right? So how do they define it?
I don't think it affects the project as such because, irrespectively, the project gets like every EB-5 investor gets like a share allocated, which is worth $800,000. So if $400,000 is coming from the investor as equity, the balance 400 is arranged by the regional center. It's not coming from the regional center. Ideally, in a decent loan setup, this should generally be arranged by the regional center through a third party. So I don't think it affects the project as such. Of course, if the repayment does not happen, that would implicate create maybe immigration challenges or other challenges for the investor. It doesn't affect the project. Like if a project is offering a loan, it's still there is no risk of the project not being able to raise the EB-5 just because the investor has not paid the loan back. So,
and that's what we also have to show from a source of funds perspective to USCIS, that the regional center is not simply recycling funds. That this is coming from verifiable third-party funds. Maybe it's a line of credit from a bank or whatever it is. It's got to be removed.
Got it. So what are the main three red flags that you have seen in the recent EB-5 offerings?
I mean, I would say the recent red flags, or maybe in general in EB-5 offerings, the ones that I see are projects that haven't started construction yet.
Okay.
I would say ones that are not fully financed, which means they haven't secured maybe a senior loan or, all the developer's equity. I would actually say that those are actually the main two that I see where I see projects sort of fail in their 956F application process. Got
it. The same question to you, Rishabh.
I think for me, I recently came across a project which said guaranteed returns, and EB-5 is not a fixed deposit. So that would be a big red flag. And
that's a big rookie mistake because...
Yeah, but it sells. So good marketing. So, and the other thing would be the biggest red flag. I think most of it is what Niral covered, but one additional thing would be the guaranteed returns.
Repayment.
And I think that goes back to your first point is you don't believe in all the marketing. I think people who market outside of the US think, oh, USCIS is never going to find out about this. They somehow, some way, they always find out. And especially when it comes to marketing. Marketing with EB-5 is very strictly overseen. The SEC gets involved and USCIS gets involved.
So, Rishabh, there are quite a few projects which also say that EB-5 is at the primary, they're at the senior position of getting repaid, but there is a bridge loan in picture. Okay. In case of a bridge loan, do actually EB-5 investors are at the senior position, or how does that work?
So, when we say, I'll speak for Civitas, right? So when we say there is a bridge loan, it's basically, the project, the construction has already started, right? The project has funding requirements that has to be met on a quarterly basis. Now, our pace as EB-5 fundraising may not match the pace that the money is required by the project, right? So what we do as Civitas is we would backstop that EB-5 raise with an alternate capital. So there is a bridge loan that comes from us to the project, but as soon as the investor wires the money, it is basically replacing our capital with the EB-5 money, right? So once the money comes in, then they become the senior lender.
Got it. But there is an angle of Civitas in itself putting in the money.
But
that doesn't
because we have to backstop, right? So if we go to a developer saying, we want to do EB-5 on your project, and we are happy to bring in $155 million in the next 12 months, right? The first question that we are asked is, what if you're not able to raise that kind of money? Right. So this is why, if you look at our collaterals, we always say that the project is fully financed. It's not relying on any EB-5 money. The developer has put in his equity. The EB-5 fundraise, Civitas has the ability to backstop it for a couple of years, right? Civitas right now has the ability to backstop it for the entire duration of the project. So one of our current projects, even if we don't raise a single dollar of EB-5, our alternate capital would ensure that the project gets completed. Now, what that does is, for example, if you're raising 100 investors, if you're only able to raise 20, this backstopping helps protect the 20 investors as well. Because if the project does not get the required money, it would not, head towards construction, not create the necessary jobs.
That helps a lot because this is one of the most common questions that I usually keep getting from investors. So, Niral, if you have, you have 60 seconds, okay? So you have to list down all the unspoken risks of EB-5 people that they overlook. So what would you rattle off?
I would start off with high returns, repayment guarantees, short sustainment period, promises that we're going to repay you in 2 years or 3 years, whatever it is. Not completely understanding capital stack, where they fit into the capital stack. Not understanding that a project needs to be fully financed, or it should be fully financed in order for them to proceed. Waiting for permits that they haven't even started construction yet. Developer has no track record. If this is the first time they're doing this type of project and it's a large scale, I would see that as a red flag. The regional center, check their history and past, make sure they don't have any issues, whether it's with USCIS or otherwise. Checking the track record of the NCE general manager. They're the ones who are responsible for that loan between the NC and the JCE. Make sure they've done this before. Make sure they know how to take care of your funds. I think that's pretty good.
Great. Yeah. Given you pointed out NCE and JCE, so what about the conflict of interest? If a particular project has NCE, JCE, the manager, all of them being the same, they have LLCs formed, but again, managed by the same person. How would you tackle it in your due diligence?
In mine, and we come across this all the time.
Yeah.
We come across completely vertically integrated regional center projects where they are already all affiliated. At least with the ones, the quote unquote good ones, we've seen them do this before. They've done it successfully. This is something they've been experienced in. And so usually we don't have any issues with it. If it's a brand new project and we've never heard of them before, they don't have a track record, then I'm a little bit more skeptical. I'm asking a lot more questions, trying to figure out exactly what they would do if something was to go wrong at each level.
So it's on a case-to-case basis.
It's always on a case-to-case basis.
Got it. So we've talked a lot about the structures and the risks, but let's actually zoom into with respect to what's confusing a lot of Indian investors with respect to rural investments and HUA. Okay. So given the whole situation right now, there's no retrogression or anything in place. How would you look at it from an immigration point of view? If a situation is the investor is currently residing in India and applying for EB-5, should he or she be looking at a rural project or a HUA?
I mean, I think that's always one of the first questions we get nowadays.
Sorry, rural or urban? I'm so sorry.
HUA or urban. So pre-Reform and Integrity Act, there was only one EB-5 category.
Yeah.
So everything, whether it was rural, infrastructure, or HUA, was all lumped together. As a result of the Reform and Integrity Act, you had EB-5 set-aside visas. So if you go to the visa bulletin, you'll see the EB-5 reserve category, and there are 3 set-aside visas. High unemployment has 10% of the visas, rural has 20% of the visas, and infrastructure has 2% of the visas. Right now, I'm not aware of any, I don't know if you are as well, I'm not aware of any infrastructure projects. The Reform and Integrity Act also said that, okay, because we want development in rural areas, we want USCIS to prioritize cases that are filed in rural areas. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you're guaranteed to have that prioritized. And that's what I try to get through to investors, is that, of course, we do see objectively, we are seeing applications in rural areas get approved in less than 12 months. At the same time, applications in high employments, on average, they're only taking about 14 months. So there's still not that big of a difference. What I always tell investors is you never look at a project based on speed or how quickly you're going to get a visa, because how quickly you're going to get a visa is not necessarily guaranteed. You always have to look at the underlying asset, make sure that in a worst case scenario, if there's retrogression and a backlog, which eventually there will be, you're okay being locked into this project for the long term.
Understood. So it doesn't really matter with respect to an investor residing in India or outside of India. Just look at it with respect to the project angle and not at the 20% set aside.
I mean, I think it does. It can matter because, of course, if there's more visas available in the rural categories, it means that it should retrogress later. At the same time, retrogression and the statistics that define retrogression, it's all live. which means that in the beginning, when the RAA came around, there were only investors in HUA or high employment projects.
Yeah.
After that, there were only, once people started to see rural projects come on board, you saw a lot of people flock towards rural projects. So at some point, there's going to be retrogression in both. Of course, you probably outside of India, outside of the US, you may stand a better chance going into a rural project. But at the end of the day, you still want to make sure that you're in the right project. And if it happens to be rural and then you happen to get a quicker processing time, then that's great.
Got it. So if someone's on an H1B or an L1, so does a rural project still make sense for concurrent filing?
I think it matters less.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because as long as the visa bulletin is current, which it is today, and it is at least next month, and to be honest, should be for the rest of this year.
Yeah.
If you're inside the US, you can concurrently file your adjustment of status. And that includes your applications for the travel document and the employment authorization. Regardless of whether you go into a rural or high employment, you're still going to get that AP-EAD combo card within the same amount of time. If the sustainment period rules come out and they remove your repayment eligibility from your immigration timeline, then you could potentially still get repaid in the same amount of time, regardless of which project you went into as well. So again, even from someone within the US, I always tell them, pick the right project for you. You don't need the green card as quickly as maybe someone from outside the US because you have the advantage of these interim benefits.
Correct. So, Rishabh, the last project was Hawaii Rural, got sold out like so quickly. So, and now there is a HUA project. So how are the investors actually tackling it? Because with respect to India, we see a lot of people and Indians residing in the US are looking towards rural, but this project seems to be incredible. How do you tackle this rural versus HUA for them?
Yeah, I think I echo what Niral said, right? So I start by telling them, don't sacrifice safety for speed, right? So even if you get a green card faster, but if the project does not perform well, that would create problems at the permanent green card level. So for investors in the US, it takes a lot of education. We tell them about the interim benefits that Niral just spoke about. For investors outside India, I tell them that this is a medium to long-term planning, right? So speed should never be the criteria. The whole objective of USCIS bringing a rural, category was not for speed, but to, promote development in the rural areas, right? So I think investors kind of put that on the side. Giving an example, I had a call yesterday and, it ended in 6 minutes. Not like asking what the HUA project is. Only investors is from the US. Oh, you don't have a rural project right now. I'm only looking for rural projects, right? So I think it's more of a herd mentality, and there needs to be a lot of coaching that needs to go on to these investors that they should not just look at a rural versus an urban.
I think the combo of the right consultant and immigration attorney comes into picture there, because they just reach out to regional centers saying that they need rural because that's what they've been hearing so far. And the 20% set aside is very starry to them then.
And I think that's where the whole developer experience, regional center experience come in.
Yeah.
I think post March 2022, because this demand for rural went up, you started seeing projects all of a sudden coming about in rural areas, people who had never done anything in rural before. And so, that can be difficult. Again, you have really good regional centers that have done rural. They've done these types of projects before. And so you can trust that, okay, they at least know what they're doing. So then if you go into that rural project and you are getting the benefit of priority processing, and you're also confident that your capital is safe and your green card is safe, it's pretty good.
So can you break down how visa set-asides actually work in reality? How much faster is rural compared to the HUA?
I think on average, and this is from the latest statistics, on average, a rural application is taking around 7 to 8 months. And on average, a high employment is probably taking around 14 to 16 months on average.
Got it.
Obviously, we've seen some take quicker or longer in both.
Understood. So also, what kind of trade-offs should investors expect if the rural projects are inherently riskier than the HUA?
I mean, I don't necessarily think that rural projects are riskier. This still goes, I've seen good projects. I've seen really good rural projects and I've seen really bad HOA projects and vice versa. So you still have to look at the underlying asset. You still have to make sure that this developer who's developing this project has done so before and they've done it successfully. If it's someone doing this for the first time ever and they're doing it at such a large scale, I think that's tough to get on board with.
It's more of a perception because of the rural 20% mindset in the people more than the riskier of the people.
Yeah, I mean, everyone just thinks that, okay, a rural area just means like barren land. And, you know, that's not necessarily the case in the US. I mean, you'd be shocked at some of the places that qualify for rural. And even HOA, I mean, I live in Long Island City in New York, and you have an HOA project that's a high unemployment area and is developing amazingly. And that's in New York. So you still get really good rural projects in really good areas. You get really good HOA projects in good areas. But you can, depending on the developer experience, the regional center experience, I think that's what determines how good a project in a particular area is actually going to be.
So let's pivot to something that's been making headlines and dinner table conversations, okay? The proposed Trump gold card. And with the website being launched just 2 days ago now. So there's a lot of noise with respect to who's considering EB-5. Let's wait and watch situation. So what you got to say about that?
I mean, we go to DC once a quarter. We meet with senators and House members to push immigration legislation, to push EB-5 reauthorization. And my partner was actually in a senator's office when the gold card was announced back in February. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. And, you know, the senator he was with was just as shocked, which goes to show that, you know, no one was really aware that this announcement was being made. And, you know, at the time we were told, okay, it would be online in 2 weeks. We are now in June, middle of June. And what we have is a website, and even that website is really just something to take down your contact information and you're put on a wait list. Right? What we do know for sure is that there's an EB-5 program. This is written into law by the Senate and the House, and it's in law until the end of September 30th, 2026. And in 2027, it's up for reauthorization. I think, you know, and I think a lot of people in our industry sort of share this sentiment, is there's definitely a place in immigration for a gold card. I don't think it replaces the EB-5 program. It just serves a different purpose. This is simply to, as a donation, it's to bring down the US deficit. The EB-5 program is for local job creation and to promote economic growth. So they serve two completely different purposes, so they can both absolutely coexist. To investors who say, well, I don't know what's going to happen, so I'm going to wait and see. Well, then you're at some point, you're probably just going to miss the boat on EB-5. Because right now, visa, especially if you're inside the US, the visa available, so you take advantage of the interim benefits. If you're outside the US and you've made up your mind to do EB-5, it's still better to get in line at the $800,000 level and earlier in line than waiting until 2027, when more likely than not, the investment amount is going to go up and there are going to be significant changes to the program.
Got it. And with the recent statistics that IUSA has given with respect to the number of jobs being actually created, the number of wealth that is being generated with EB-5, what you got to say with that?
I mean, I think it just goes to show that EB-5 does work. You know, it does bring in billions of dollars. It creates millions of jobs, and it truly does promote economic growth. And the economic growth is not simply from one $800,000 investment. The economic growth is from a high net worth family shifting to the US. Now their kids are going to school in the US. They're paying college tuition fees in the US. They're getting jobs in the US, and they're paying taxes in the US. All of this, and then they're going to start having their own families inside the US. So you can see that it's creating generational wealth and economic growth in the US.
So Rishabh, you speak to investors on a daily basis wherein people are diversing with respect to actually going ahead with EB-5 or the whole political posturing of gold card. So how do you actually calm their nerves down?
Yeah, so, you know, we have a lot of questions from investors asking whether I should wait for the gold card or, you know, whether I should do EB-5. And, you know, my first question is, do you have 5 million, right? So
5 million to give away and not to get it back.
Yeah, so which is fair. Like, I think it has created more confusion, not much clarity. I kind of end up or summarize it by saying, you know, EB-5 is real. It's been there since a very long time. you are seeing approvals, there is grandfathering, like Niral said, built into the Reform and Integrity Act. So don't wait for the gold card. Like if you have the $800,000 now, I think EB-5 is still a faster and a cheaper way to the same destination, right? The gold card is also offering the same destination, but maybe a business class ticket. So yeah.
Yeah. With respect to the current offering that Civitas has, would you highlight something with respect to the loan model that you have? Yeah.
Right. So yeah, like Niral said, we've been testing out loan models. We've been, looking at what our peers are doing in the industry. So, at the larger level, I do want to tell the investors that, we collaborate as stakeholders, right? We work together to pass in important reforms and, understand what works, what does not work. So what Civitas has structured does work. We've consulted, we've tried this on some of our investors. We've learned from some of the mistakes that we made. We've not had any denials as of now on the loan program. So what we're doing is we're offering like a third party loan. So we are basically enabling it from a third party who's licensed in the business of offering a loan. Of course, this is a high risk loan. Our interest rate probably is higher than most of our competitors. And our chief investment officer, Jonathan Kern, he kind of appreciates that. And, I was as a sales, I did tell him that, this may be a deal breaker. But when I saw the logic, it was very important that we actually want people to pay it off earlier, right? Because it helps them with their immigration story, because USCIS, like Niral said, wants to see the repayment. So if we start offering very cheap loans or if we make it very, very convenient, of course, there's something wrong on that. So, yeah.
Correct. So both of you have a bird's eye view of where the industry is going. So what are the trends that you're seeing with respect to EB-5, the type of investors, the type of projects out there, and with the current whole political structuring coming into picture?
I mean, I think with the on the political side, obviously immigration is always a political subject.
Yeah.
And whether anyone likes it or not, all immigration is going to be pulled into politics, whether it's obviously on the illegal side and the undocumented side, but for sure on the legal side as well. You see this in the H-1Bs, you see it in the F-1s, you see it with the EB-1As, and then EB-5, I think, relatively has remained stable and untouched, because I think with EB-5, it's less legal interpretation of the law. Of course, I do feel like we're constantly teaching immigration officers on, what source of funds is, certain project requirements and things like that. But I think that's an ongoing thing that we just have to deal with. But relatively, it remains actually untouched. But because of these issues we're seeing in the other visa categories, we are seeing a bigger trend towards EB-5. Because right now, out of all the other employment-based categories, it's the only one, at least for Indian nationals and Chinese nationals, it is current. Which means that if you are in the US on these other visas, you can pivot to EB-5, secure those interim benefits of employment and travel authorization, probably still the quickest way to getting a green card. And that goes the same for anyone who's outside the US too. We're seeing another flock towards EB-5 from outside the US. If someone's in India and they've missed the H-1B lottery, they weren't selected, but they still want to come to the US, then we're seeing a bigger shift to EB-5.
Got it. So with the current layoffs in the USCIS, have you seen the timeline to be increasing with respect to approvals?
It was funny. Just last night, I got a bunch of messages from my team. We had received 3 EB-5 approvals, all in 6 and 7 months.
Has that speeded up?
And one of them was an HUA. And
nice.
We get outliers like that as well. But I think right now it's remained pretty stable, I would say. And I've done EB-5 for 10 years.
Yeah.
And under the old program, and this is when USCIS was fully stocked and staffed, they were taking 5-6 years to approve some of these petitions. Since the Reform and Integrity Act, they've gone so much better.
They've become efficient.
They've become a lot more efficient. And that's really surprising considering the layoffs that we've seen heard at the IPO level and at the USCIS level. Of course, as time goes on, there's a new USCIS director coming in as well. Yeah. So as soon as, as time goes on, that could obviously change. But that's also something I tell my clients. You've got to make peace with the fact that there's certain things in immigration as a whole that no one here has any control over. USCIS processing is the number one thing.
Correct. So both of you, if you can give me 3-step to a decision framework as to when an EB-5 investor is looking at a particular project. looking at a financial and an immigration point of view. What are the 3 steps that anybody, any EB-5 investor should be looking at in order to drive to that decision?
Apparently, you have the investor psychology, so maybe you go first.
I think so. A lot of investors, and this has happened with me like over the last 6 years. Like, investors reach out to us, start looking at projects, start evaluating it, start spending a lot of time, running diligence on that, and then we are sold out, right? Because I think they always underestimate their source of fund, and like everybody thinks that, their source of fund is simple. Like, I have stopped sending, introductions to Niral where I use the word simple. So I don't think they understand that, there is a whole entire path of funds, which drives me crazy at times as well. So I think the investor should start with, okay, what is my immigration timeline? Who are my dependents? What is my country of chargeability? Because there is still a lot of confusion. People think that just because I have a certain passport, that is not how the USCIS, looks at the country of chargeability. So they should start with that. Then they can, retain the attorney, start working on the source of fund, and the project selection can happen parallelly because, for every project, like a good project should be able to sell out in a couple of months, like depending on the size. But if they have an immigration attorney engaged, like if they like a particular project, they will be in the position to kind of block a slot or, give an estimated timeline to the project that, okay, my immigration attorney says that I will have a green light in the next 2 months or, 2 weeks based on the source of fund, right? So, and based on that, then they should be looking at the project. I don't think looking at the project is the right way to start EB-5. So.
Understood. But rephrasing the question, what would be the 3 steps? Like if I am looking at EB-5 as a fresher, okay? Just last night I was discussing about EB-5 and today I've come into the picture. What are the 3 things that I need to look at? Given the immigration and the financial overview as my money is going to come back and my green card is secured.
I mean, I would always say the first thing you should do is identify where your funds are coming from before you go through this, because no regional center is going to take you on as an investor unless you have documented $800,000. You also don't want to go through this process unless you have documented $800,000. So the first thing I always ask my clients is, okay, well, where's your funds sitting right now? How did it get there? And if they're tied up in assets, how long do you think it will take to liquidate those assets? And then that tells me everything. And then that also puts it into perspective for that particular investor, exactly what their timeline looks like, exactly when they should get started, when they need to start talking to the regional center, and when they can eventually file.
Got it. So any investor coming to you discussing the project today, and let's say the source of fund is in process, okay? And they reserve a slot, okay? They reserve it, they do not have any issues with respect to it. Coming to the source of fund, they have reserved a slot, okay, and that project is subscribed, let's say. And if he or she encounters an SOF delay or any kind of, let's say, hiccup, okay, how long do you actually keep that slot for?
Yeah. So at times, when we are reserving slots, what we do is we kind of work in tandem with the immigration attorneys. So we kind of understand from the investor or the immigration attorney what is the timeline that we're looking at. We would add a buffer. Ideally, we like to hold slot for 60 days. That is our preferred choice. In rare cases, we've gone beyond that. Like EB-5 is very, very dynamic. Like I've never had 2 clients with the exact same things, right? It's a service. So, we also understand that, sometimes we have to be flexible. So we purposely decide not to put ourselves in a box of a certain timeline because, different families would have different needs and different issues. There are investors who plan it in 15 days, but for some reason the liquidation takes time. Again, adding the currency restrictions, around some countries, all of that. So we are okay to extend it, but that's like a conversation that mutually we would have with the investor and decide whether we want to do that or not, and whether it is in the interest of the investor and also the fund, right? Because if we keep a fund open for too long waiting for an investor, it may affect the other investors who've already invested, right? So we need to kind of balance it out.
Understood. Because this is one of the questions I recently encountered with one of my clients, wherein they paid the admin, reserved the slot, and SOF has issues.
Wow.
Yeah, correct. Situation question. Okay. A father is doing EB-5 for the daughter. SOF is done. They were looking at multiple projects. There were 2 projects they were considering. Both of them rural. One, 956F approved. The other one was 956F applied but awaiting for approval. He did not go ahead with project 1. He's gone ahead with project 2. But he's gotten a letter saying that if the 956F gets denied or for whatsoever reasons the investor wants to get the money back, they will get it back in 5 working days. As a regional center, would you do that?
So one, I would want to start that an I-956F approval does not mean the guarantee of the project. I've looked at the filings. It's more like, for the Indian investors, more like a KYC that I'm submitting to the USCIS, that this is the project, this is the business plan, this is the forecast, etc., etc. Like Niral said, has construction already started? Maybe not, right? So I may have an I-956F approval, but I may have issues with my permits. I may have an issue where the senior lender has not been finalized, the project never kicks off, right? So we have something called as the I-5 to 6C denial guarantee, which kind of covers the I-956F denial as well. What I would then, if I am the investor, as part of my due diligence, I would want to know is, okay, how the regional center is going to arrange that money to be repaid back to me. Because if it has already gone to the project, like, as a regional center, we cannot just pull out money. Like, there are rules around the project as well as to how much money can we pull out. I do know a scenario where regional centers keep like some portion of the EB-5 capital, like they arrange a separate portion as a deposit, which they use it for I-5 to 6C denials. But if the I-956F is denied, that means that, they have to, of course, repay back all the investors. So yeah, we do it as well.
Got it. And let's say for whatever reason that project invested has been denied, or the approval is taking longer than anticipated. If as an investor, they want to remove the funds and put it into a different project, how would you look at it on an immigration point of view?
I mean, I think we need to assess where the applicant is. Obviously, I think you said they're inside the US. So we have to see, have they used their APEAD, if they received one through the first application, if they're still here on another non-immigrant visa, are they still maintaining that non-immigrant visa? So we have to take all of this into account in determining when and how a new application could be filed so as not to jeopardize their current immigration status.
Got it. But is it a headache to do that?
I mean, that's our job, right?
Yeah, because
our job is to deal with headaches.
Because what also happens is, firstly, you have spent in so much amount of time with respect to doing the due diligence, and we're humans, prone to errors. It's happened, but I want to fix it. But is it possible for me to fix it in 30 days?
I mean, I can speak for us.
Yep.
I think almost any issue when it comes to EB-5 is something that can be resolved.
Your team is at a jet speed. I should tell you that. They are available 24/7. They want to be there at all times. Yeah.
But I think that, again, that's what good counsel is going to give you. And we know many other good immigration attorneys that do EB-5 and they offer the same thing. And that's why I always tell clients, like, make sure you have someone who understands obviously EB-5 law, but also understands how non-EB-5 immigration also works, because it all ties in together, especially when you're in the US on an F1 or H1B. They need to understand the complexities and the nuances between, maybe giving up one status in favor of the other, when you can maybe leave the country and come back in, what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do. And then in cases like this, how you can strategize between moving from one EB-5 project to another one and still being able to work and travel.
Correct. So there is an interesting case of one of the investors, invested the money, everything done, I-5 to 6C awaiting approval. The primary applicant, and there are dependents. There are 2 sons who are the dependents, okay? The father is the primary applicant. And in case of the elder son is already on an F1 and studying in the US. He was an Indian citizen, but changed his citizenship from India to Germany. The 5 to 6 approval is pending, okay, while all this goes on. And the son, who is on an F1, has moved from US to Germany for a vacation. But given the whole F1 situation going around, given his citizenship has been changed, what are the implications for his approval? Or as a dependent also, how could he actually make sure that he gets his conditional?
Well, the good thing about EB-5 is, or depending on how you look at it, it's based on country of birth anyways, and not citizenship.
Okay.
And it goes by the country of birth of the principal applicant. So if you have an Indian-born parent, let's just say that both kids were born in the UK, this would still fall under the India line. Even if that UK citizen got German citizenship and got Polish citizenship, picked up 2 other citizenships, this would still fall under the Indian line. So that really doesn't matter.
Okay, got it. So what is one of the EB-5 myths that you have heard and you want to bust it?
Man, there's a lot.
Yeah, there's quite a few, right? While I was thinking.
100% success rate.
100%, yeah, 100% success rate. I think that's the biggest one. No attorney has a 100% success rate. First of all, we get that a lot. People ask us, "Do you have a 100% success rate?" I'm like, no. If you do something in such a large volume and you've done it for as long as we have over the course of 10 years, you see rejections, you see denials, you see project failures. I mean, you see all these things. That doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing. I mean, typically when we see rejections and denials, it's usually at the source of funds stage. Usually when a client has pushed us to file against our advice and they say that they're going to provide these documents later but never do. Or ones who do what we call tranching or a partial investment, where you invest a certain amount now and the balance later, and they never get around to funding the balance. Those sort of applications get denied. Now, I am confident that if someone follows our step-by-step guidance, which can be annoying and frustrating, then they have a great chance of success. And I think the same thing happens on the project side too. It's still a development. That doesn't mean everyone out there gets project failures, but it's almost like asking, have you ever seen an investment fail? Right? If no one's seen an investment fail, I don't know what world they're living in.
Yeah. Same question to you, Rishabh. What is the recent? I would rather
He gave me
actually,
mine
because you
because
have
so I
quite a few,
appreciate
right? There are quite a few. The most recent one.
I think the most recent EB-5 myth, I think the biggest one that I keep hearing is the 100% success. I'm just thinking of one more. Help me out.
I'm seeing a lot of right now guaranteed green card in 12 months.
Oh yeah. The
They put an
timelines.
asterisk.
And there's always an asterisk, but everyone misses the asterisk.
Yeah. I call it a black box. Like I call USCIS, like, because sometimes I get asked, like, somebody, I think the biggest myth is the WhatsApp group.
Oh,
Yes,
let's
like
get started there.
if somebody sends me a message saying, like, I try to educate them with the right information. I kind of sometimes send the USCIS website link to them, but then they come back to me, but I heard on the WhatsApp group. And I think all of that, like there is, like, people from the WhatsApp group, my friend has a priority date of 20, X, and, he got approved in 6 months. So if I apply now, I may just, add another 2 months. Like they do all of these kind of calculations. I think all of that is a myth. Like, please, work with trusted immigration attorneys, one right next to me, to get these kind of information. But again, it's a black box. So that's a myth. Like
there are a lot of marketing gimmicks. People will make a lot of promises. And so, I think it's important for investors to read that, understand it, and then go to their trusted advisors like, hey, look, this is what I've read. Can you tell me whether this is real? And that's proper due diligence. But someone who says, hey, this is what I read, so it must be true, it's tough to talk to that person.
Recently, most of my potential clients are sending me screenshots of Gemini, Perplexity, and comparing the answers. And then they just send me the screenshots. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, what's the question for me? Because you're getting various answers and from various streams. Like, what do you look at it?
Well, that's the thing, right? And especially with EB-5, like Rishabh said, it's dynamic. The program's only been around since 1990 or 1991, and then it used to sunset. And then it really is based on a lot of trends. It wasn't until 2022 that we had some sort of real codified EB-5 law in place. And even that, there's a lot in there that's up for interpretation. The IPO, which is the Immigrant Investor Program Office, even they're learning, I think, EB-5 every single day. When I said that we're educating them on EB-5, it's true. So when an investor goes and types into Google some random question and ChatGPT or Gemini is coming up with something, it's frustrating.
So what's the one question, according to you, that the investor should ask a regional center?
I'll tell you one that they should ask and one they ask, but they shouldn't really be asking.
Okay.
So one I think they should always ask is, tell me the developer you're working with and their track record.
Correct.
And the one that I feel like investors always ask is, tell me your repayment track record. Because that just tells me that they don't understand how EB-5 works, what they understand about the sustainment period and repayment. But I think if you ask about the developer, and of course there are other questions to ask as well, but if you start off with that one, that gives you a sense of idea that this regional center knows what they're doing.
Got it. What is the one question that investors always ask you, but you thought, kya puch liya yaar? Matlab, you could have asked me better.
I think, I'm always asked the same question is, what is the likelihood of, my capital being returned on a specific date, or what is the likelihood of the developer not kind of extending the loan. And goes back to what Niral said is look at the developer's skin in the game, look at the capital stack. Nobody unfortunately can predict it, because most of these repayments are 4 to 5 years down the line, and it's just like, it's not the developer also, if they want to extend this, there is a cost to it, right? Like they would not do it, and ideally we would structure it in a way where they are kind of motivated to not extend it. But for some reasons, if they do need to extend it, like that's one answer, that there is no right answer to that. And I that is one question that I always feel, okay, like 𝗥𝗶𝘀𝗵𝗯𝗵 𝗚.
Correct. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the frameworks, the red flags, the legal fine print, but let's make it even more real. I'm going to walk you through a few real life situations, and with respect to what complexity they are looking at, and the messy source of fund, and exactly what they're looking about. So if you were in that situation, how would you respond to it? Starting one, because obviously there is legally that you're looking at, emotionally, financially, there are everything. And when there is family involved, everything just goes haywire. So let's start with this one. An Indian EB-5 investor includes his son as a dependent. And this son is currently, he was looking at F1, and he's been charged with a theft case, okay, which then proven non-guilty. In this case, if he is looking at EB-5, the father is the primary applicant and the son is the dependent, will his EB-5 be impacted in this case?
The EB-5 would still be fine, because the principle, just so everyone understands how an EB-5 petition works, it's one petition and you have a principal applicant. Everyone else is just a dependent. So that's not where you would disclose that information about dependents. So the EB-5 petition, which is the I-526E, as long as the principal applicant doesn't have any issues, that would actually still get approved. It's at the second stage, where you're going through the interview, then you have to submit individual green card applications for each person on the application. So the principal applicant and the dependents. At that point, you would disclose the criminal history, the charging papers, whatever the outcome was. It's a little bit too vague for me to give an answer whether it would be approved or not. But I think typically that if you do have some sort of criminal issue and it's been discharged, or you are found not guilty or something like that, then you should be fine.
Got it. Going back to the same situation that we were discussing before with respect to the Indian looking at a German citizenship. As an EB-5 applicant, what should be his first go-to with respect to letting the attorney know or ensuring that the son's F1 interview actually goes through?
I mean, I ask my clients to sort of, once they've retained us and they've made their mind up to move forward with EB-5, I ask them to keep me informed of every single immigration decision they're about to take. Whether it's for themselves or whether it's for their kids. So even if that kid is going to go for an F1 interview, we want to know about it, because at that time we can sort of advise on current trends, what they may need to do in terms of documentation wise, how they may need to conduct the interview. Ultimately, an F1 dependent should still be fine, because you're simply just a dependent on the application. But we, of course, still want to know before they schedule anything and do anything, so we can prepare them as well.
Prepare them for the interview also, right?
Right.
Because there are multiple checkboxes which also says that if you or anybody in the family has applied for EB-5.
Yeah, and
or looking at the investors.
Yeah, and there's some nuances there. Because technically, if you're a dependent on an EB-5 petition, you haven't applied for EB-5. So you could truthfully mark no on the DS-160 for that F1 interview or that F1 application, because you haven't applied for EB-5. You're not the principal applicant. At the same time, we always tell our clients, well, just to be on the safe side, mark yes. And then in the explanation box, you write, my parent is the principal applicant on this EB-5 petition. There was also a memo that came out a couple of years ago, a USCIS memo, that basically says that if an F1 student is going for an F1 interview, the fact that they have an immigrant petition pending cannot by itself be held against them in terms of getting an F1. So it does help, and then that's why it's important to always let your attorney know what you're doing when you're going to do it, so we can always advise on how things are going to be.
Got it. So an Indian investor on an H-1B visa applies for EB-5 in May 2025. Their H-1B expires in November 2025. What are the chances that they will receive their EAD plus AP combo card by October before it gets expired?
The chances, I mean, I would say right now we see anyone who's applying concurrently for the adjustment of status, they typically get their AP-EAD within 4 to 6 months.
Okay.
Majority. Of course, that can get extended to 8 months, and that's where I say make peace with immigration. The good news is that, I think a lot of people think, oh, my H-1B is expiring, I have to leave the country. But if you filed an EB-5 petition and you filed that I-45, that allows you to stay in the country in valid status past your H-1B expiry. So you might not be able to work if you haven't got the EAD, but you can stay in the country, and then once you get your EAD, you can go right back to work.
Got it. So is there any way that you can forecast or anybody can forecast the influence of the timeline?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, there must be some 1, 2, 3 category, like influence, not saying that you need to know, but at least with respect to what are the 3 categories that they would be looking at for the approval of EAD?
EAD, I mean, it's really just basic biographic information. And that's why to this day, we've never seen denials or rejection. Actually, that's why we can say 100% success rate. It's because it's just basic biographic information.
Yeah.
It's literally, it's a 2-page application form that asks for your name, date of birth, and your current immigration status. That's it. So there's no reason why it should even take that long. And I think it's just because of the amount of applicants and limited resources. That's what determines how long it takes. But I mean, we've seen approvals in as little as 2 months. We've seen them take as long as 8 months. Got
it. So as a regional center, do you have any tips for the investors to set the right expectation during this window?
I think, you spoke about this specific case of October, and I would say, because I'm an Indian, so please don't, bet your Diwali on this. So, it's a black box. As a regional center, yes, it's going to remain a black box. There is USCIS involved. It's a third party. It's not something that we as a regional center can control. It's not something that Niral as an immigration attorney can control. Really depends on, somebody picking up your file and, ensuring that, they're approving the right person. So,
got it. So, as a regional center also, what kind of communication do you usually put out to investors when an I-956F is awaiting approval? You've got the receipt, everything great. But for the approval to come in, it typically takes around 5 to 6 months, best case scenario. Otherwise, what are the kind of communication that you usually send out in order to ensure that investors are secure or pampered or have enough knowledge?
Yeah, so going back to my earlier point, right? So an I-956F approval does not guarantee the success of the project. What we as a regional center do is we send out monthly reports, and these reports are really nice, good 1-page summary of, how the construction is progressing, how much EB-5 money has been drawn down, how much senior lender has been disbursed, what is the construction percentage of the project, number of jobs created. So, if you look at 6 reports of any of our projects month on month, you'd actually be able to track progress because, month 1 would be, say, 10 jobs, month 6 would be 250 jobs, right? So that is the kind of communication that we put out. On the I-956F side, once we submit the application, we don't get an SMS update from the USCIS saying, hey, we've picked up your file. That does not happen, right? So there's unfortunately no update that we can send out. Of course, if there is an unreasonable delay, we work with our counsel to file a WOM or, something like that to get a reward back from the USCIS. But I don't think as a regional center, 5 to 6 months, ideally would be a great timeline if we get that. In my experience, I think couple of our projects, it took around 11-12 months to get that. And a lot of investors who waited for the I-956F approval on those projects, we were out of slots by the time the approval came in. So
yeah, personal experience, your 956F comes and within 2 weeks it's done.
Yeah, but
it's gone.
It's not 2 weeks. You need to understand that there were investors who filed before the I-956F came in, right? So the project did not get sold out in 2 weeks. There were very limited number of slots, that were available. And but those who invested earlier, they actually saw the project moving on, and there is a forecast that we also do, right? So we also have a quarterly fund report that is only sent out to the investors who invest with us.
Correct. It's about the trust then.
Yes.
Yeah. So quick fire round. Let's play red flag and a green flag, okay? So I'm going to just tell you the project rate. You will tell me as to if it's a red flag or a green flag and why. Starting with Niral, 90% of jobs are yet to be created.
Red flag.
Okay.
Depends on what stage. But of course, if the project's already started construction and it's been quite some time and, only 10% of jobs are being created and you're supposedly fully financed, then the question's got to be, well, where's the money going if it's not going into the project to create jobs?
Got it. Rishabh, developer has only 1% equity.
Red flag. No skin in the game.
Project is in the rural area.
Again, green and red flag depending on, like I said, there are some good projects in rural areas, but there are some bad projects in rural areas. I think what the Reform and Integrity Act has done has really cleaned up the EB-5 industry as a whole.
Yeah.
And I think today more than ever before, you do generally across the board see better projects that are meeting, I think, heightened compliance requirements. So overall, I would say green flag.
Okay. Rishabh, RC promises return of capital in 3 years.
I would say red flag because, as an RC, we are not allowed to use the word guarantee of return of capital. So, we can forecast, we can estimate, we can give a positive timeline. And, all I can do as sales is give a lot of hope. But, definitely no guarantees. Yeah.
Got it. This one is again for you.
Okay.
0 admin fees.
Like I said, it depends on what level of fundraising are we in, right? It's like, ultimately we are into sales, right? So if we need some momentum, right, we might do a couple of them. We would advertise maybe a lot on 0 admin, but we would internally just decide, okay, out of the 200 slots, we are only going to offer 10 at 0 admin, right? But it helps us pick up momentum.
Escrow until I-526E clause.
That's generally a red flag for me because you definitely want the funds. I think the majority view right now is that the funds need to be deployed to the JCE for your sustainment period to start. So if the I-526E is not going to be approved in, let's say 16, 18 months, that means your funds are just sitting there. They're technically not really at risk. So it's important that those funds are deployed as early as possible.
Got it. Okay. So to close this out, I want each one of you to imagine you're speaking to a close friend investing in EB-5 for the first time. Okay. What is the one piece of advice that you would give them as not a regional center and as not an immigration attorney? Okay. Based on a friend who's doing it for family. Like, what would you do?
Don't be an idiot. Ask the right, if it's truly a friend, I would say, A, hire the right attorney, look at the project, don't believe in flashy things. EB-5 is supposed to be boring. It's supposed to be very vanilla. You get your capital protected, you get your green card, and you get out. If you're bored, that's a good thing. And then on the legal side, absolutely hire the right attorney. You don't go for someone who's just simply cheap or promising you the world. You need someone that's going to give you the good and the bad, set your expectations. That way, there are no surprises as you go through this process.
Got it. Rishabh?
I think I would, if it was my close friend, I would say choose the right consultant. Think of this like a second life, not a second citizenship. Ask a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to walk away. And, I'm glad if you're my friend, if you have that kind of capital.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you so much for both of your time. It was, giving your time to answer these questions, I'm just indebted for that. So if this episode helped you think clearer or ask better questions, share it with someone who's on the same journey. And if you want to talk and understand your opinions, options, and just get honest guidance, DM or click on the link shown in the notes section or schedule a call with us. Don't forget to grab your freebie, that is the EB-5 investor checklist. That is the 10 questions that you must ask before you say a yes to a regional center and to an attorney. The link is in the description.